The partnerships tool is something that we have online at VicHealth. It was first developed in 2004. It has now been translated into a number of languages, including Cantonese. It's used internationally. And it was developed as a very small tool, and it has always been used as and redesigned and reprinted and updated with practicality in mind. So what I'm going to do today is take you through a little bit of what's in the tool. What it focuses on is an opportunity to reflect on what partnerships are, and it also looks at providing focus for discussion and reflection. Now, there is a science to this. Partnership development, we all think we know something about it, and we do. And this tool brings together what a number of people have thought, and a lot of the research around partnerships has been brought together and shrunk into this summary document, if you like. There are different activities within it, very quickly. It is looking at changing organisations ultimately, because it's the change not only in organisations but in people's behaviour and attitudes that means that change will be sustainable. So you don't hold a meeting, have some good ideas and then go away with nothing changing. You actually work towards change at every point in time and attempt to instil it in every action and every reflection around partnership. Some partnerships are better than others. Some organisations are worth partnering with, others are not. And I know that sounds controversial, but sometimes people partner for the wrong reasons, and I think that's just a natural thing that can happen. So being clear about exactly why it is that we're partnering with whomever is a very important starting point. So it's not about being warm and fluffy and bringing everybody on board. It's actually about being extremely strategic with who you spend time developing relationships and partnerships with and why. In terms of, and to that point, activity 3, analysing existing and potential partnerships, often requires us to think about who we're in partnership with now and why, and that in fact that may be subject to change, because we may actually have more resourceful and more appropriate partnerships waiting out there beyond our purview, which we've not actually addressed. So again, it's just a call to look reflectively and strategically at the kind of individuals, organisations and groups with whom we partner. Change needs to be tracked and monitored. And here's just an example, and it is in your PowerPoints, but when we look at the different levels of change and what it can look like, here are some, they're not quite indicators, but they're areas which you might like to consider within your schools and community groups around, I've put in the effort, what can I possibly anticipate may have changed as a result? In terms of changing organisations, there are probably 4 areas that we would consider important around organisational change that comes from organisational change theory. And I just want to talk about the first one, motivating change, because it's probably the most important one in our mind. So we want to convince workers within organisations, it might be the school and community agencies, that partnership development's actually something that's important to them. So bringing them on board. What might we do to achieve that? And here are some examples. Outlining current position of the organisation and where it could be in the future, so it's that sort of inspirational work. Highlighting some approaches to change and how they could be implemented, so starting small and growing larger, bringing people on board. And also not being afraid of resistance, addressing resistance and fear of change. That is one of the biggest obstacles we find to organisational change. You want to bring people on board and harness enthusiasm. And it is important to address that head on. The other thing I did want to talk to you about were the definitions of partnership and how different they may be. And as I said, information sharing at the one end of the continuum is terrific and very useful, but it has a certain purpose only. As you get into more intense forms of relationship, you end up at the other end, which is collaborating where you actually share turf and resources. And again, it's serious. It's about resource sharing. It's about having a commitment, it's about mutual trust. Now, those things don't come easily, they take a long time, and they need to be worked on, and they need an enormous amount of commitment set aside for them to work and to be sustainable and maintainable. But things can fall over very quickly if the work hasn't been put in. The checklist looks at these sort of issues, and the checklist looks like this for those people who haven't seen it before. These areas are actually all based on research around organisational change and partnership development. What you can do with these is, this is just one section. You can do these, you can score yourself. Can I say the score is a little bit irrelevant on the one hand, but we did put a scoring checklist in because it makes people consider and reflect more deeply than if there was none. So that's the only reason it's there. You can actually use it to score and then go back after time, perhaps 12 months later, and see if there's been any change. This is one section. You can choose to use one section alone, give it out to all of your organisational members or your staff who are developing a partnership, get them to consider it, go away, consider it individually, and then come back as a group and reflect. People with, we're often brought into sort of conflict situations where we use this tool as a means of talking about a partnership. What may have gone wrong, what could be strengthened, why it's not working. Again, this is just one example of the types of questions that one might ask. It's all about triggering and reflective discussion, which you can then think about sharing with others after you've had some consideration yourself. So they're the sorts of activities. I guess the other thing in partnership building is to look at a common framework, common language with which you come to people with. Again, don't assume that school community will have the same sort of language and understanding of issues as do community organisations or others. They don't. And so it is about finding common ground to begin with, some sort of universal language, and also looking at what the capacity of your workers are. If they need some time and assistance to actually look at partnership development in a very strategic way, it will pay off for the organisation, for your schools, if you put that time in early on. Thank you. Any questions?
Can you do stuff with that partnership tool? Can you use it statistically and stuff? And have you?
You can use it to show change in terms of recording the responses to it. So certainly the third activity, which is the checklist, can actually be we ask all of our funded projects to use it as part of their evaluation, so they can track change in the types of partnerships they've developed, which will change over time, and what's happened with them as well. So they do use it, and that's an empirical way of using it, yes.